you all. Thank you very much for the kind introduction for starting early. And yeah, my topic is on linking science, communities, and conservation actions in human-dominated agricultural landscapes. So, if you search internet about Sri Lanka, yeah, this is the result that I received from last night. The keyword, as you can see here, is just Sri Lanka. What an amazing country to live in, and you can see the beauty of our landscapes and the country and the wildlife, the beaches. Very nice story. So if a foreigner see this kind of search result, most often they will choose that they should be visiting here. If we add some more keywords into the same search, so I have entered Sri Lanka history. So you can see that how beautiful is our very rich cultural history. So starting from our traditional ruins, most often they are like over 2 centuries old, and also we have had British colonial history, and all these things are reflected when we have history, Sri Lankan history in the search term. So this is our dirty secret. When you add Sri Lanka plus environmental issues or environmental crisis, things are showing up quite often. We see lots of areas being polluted, not just land but also water, our marine ecosystems, and the things move on. So with that, setting up, I would take a small opening into the speech today. So we have been developing from a traditional agricultural economy. So the purpose of your session here is also on agriculture. So I think many developmental economists or any developmental practitioners, they often, even the politicians, we have seen that we are boast about it. We are an agricultural country. Without developing agriculture, there is no way out. And agriculture must be our backbone of development. Is that really true? So we boast about our small size, like 65,000 kilometers, and a coastline, and also we have 103 river basins. There are radiating or central mountain massifs, and so these are some of our ecosystems that we are really proud about. But if you look at the distribution of forest cover in our country, the green color is mostly, that is centered around the dry zone landscape. Why we have most of white color over here is that is where our most of this biodiversity is actually present, which is the wet part of the country and the intermediate part of the country. And the forest here in this region we call highly fragmented, and the remaining amount of forest is very small in the region where we have most of our biodiversity. And if we go to some of these numbers, so we have about 3,000 plus angiosperm species from many different plant families, and over 863 of these plants, the flowering plants of our country, are endemic to our country, which means they are only found in our country and they are not reported from nowhere else in the world. But the real tragedy is that half of this angiosperm plant biodiversity is threatened to extinction. 48%, roughly half of this, is most of them are concentrated around our wet zone. So if you go into other plant and animal taxa, the story is no other different. So we have about 139 freshwater species, and 61 or 44% of them are endemic. That means they are not found anywhere else on the world, and they are reported from these river basins. Not even within these river basins, very small tributaries, and some of these species are really so-called point endemic species. They are reported only from a particular location of our country and nowhere else in the world they have these specimens and the species. So that much of biodiversity is there in our country, thanks to its amazing geological and evolution history. But my talk here today is not to talk about biodiversity and how rich our ecosystems are, but just to make a mention, not only the fish species, inland fish species. So sometimes back, I think in 2005 or 9, Professor Madhav published this paper in Science. He described that Sri Lanka is an amphibian biodiversity hotspot. What's the meaning of this hotspot? I'll come to that later on in some of my slides. We have about 200 plus bird species, some of them are migratory. And if you take any other animal taxa, the story is no way different than some of these examples that I took in. And what is a biodiversity hotspot? Sri Lanka is, I think many of you know that, is considered as a biodiversity hotspot together with the Western Ghats of India, the red color area that you see in this map. So is this something that we can really be proud about? In order to qualify a country or a region as a biodiversity hotspot, we have to meet these two criteria. Number one, we have to have at least 1,500 species of vascular plants that are found nowhere else on the world. That means we should have had more than 1,500 endemic species, vascular plants. But in our country, we don't have that many. We have about 800, maybe 200 more, because one of our colleagues, Dr. Vivek Jayasen, recently published a book describing over 200 endemic species to our country, new records. Most of them are only reported from a particular location. And also, together, when we taken together with Western Ghats of India, we reached that target over 1,500. And we have lost more than 70% of our forest cover, which means we have only less than 30% left. Is that something that we can be happy about or boast about, that Sri Lanka is a biodiversity hotspot? That is absolutely not. Also, Sri Lanka generates over 1.6 million metric tons of plastic waste annually, and most of these is ended up in our oceans and in our rivers and in our terrestrial ecosystems. And in 2017, we was rewarded very badly that we were among the top 5 countries releasing the most plastic waste into our oceans. And is that something we can be very happy about? Not just that, I think this is the country that only in the world that a dam, large scale open dam was collapsed, not actually 1924, if I get my facts correct. 24 people was killed because of a slide, because the meter of the large scale dam was slide, and that many people were killed. And this is what you see on the internet last night. This is the meter of the dam. Is it being recovered? Like it says, it is permanently flows. So is that the problem is solved? So if you search over the internet, like different areas where we have open solid waste management or areas or centers, most of these centers actually doing collecting unsorted dump, and they are being dumped in open places. So our wildlife, our ecosystems are being polluted and destroyed day by day and month by month. And if you go into our forest ecosystems, they are being destroyed, and we are boasting that we are an agricultural country, and we are a country that we have a very limited land, very limited amount of arable lands where we can do agriculture. The area that we can expand this land is really limited, and what we have to do as agriculturists is actually to increase our productivity. So we have to bring in technology. So these are the stories happening from dry zone forest ecosystems in our country and to the wet zone. And this is what has happened over the last 30 decades, last 3 decades. in the dry zone. So you can see some of these green color areas as protected areas, and so there's a website called Global Forest Watch, and it calculates the amount of tree cover loss, not the forest loss, because if you classify that as forest loss, the forest department will come forward and say that no, forests are not being lost. But if we consider that the tree cover is being lost, because if you consider most of our agro ecosystems like home guards under the same definitions that we define forest cover, they are actually coming under forest. So these are the areas where most of our forests are being lost. The tree cover is being lost. You can see most of that loss is outside our protected area, not network. You can see some of these protected, even inside the protected areas, there's some tree cover loss. And not just that, human-wildlife conflict has been a big issue over the many of our history. So most of them are being killed. And if we take this into an account, so most of our protected area is here, and these are the places where we have most of our elephants being killed. And if we overlap these two things together, you can see that most of the elephants are being killed outside the protected area network, and also some of them are in the within protected areas. And also this overlap with the paddy lands in Sri Lanka. I think if you listen to the yesterday's keynote speaker, he has been echoing that we have been cultivating this very luxurious grass in our ecosystems, and that is a grass that elephants really like to live on. And over 2,000 years we have been cultivating this grass, what we call paddy, that is something that we eat, and in the landscape that elephants really dominate. So isn't that the reason why we have this many elephant tails? So these are the 10 hotspots. So if you take this up, like in Polonnaruwa, we have 45% protected area, and 4,000, almost 4,000 elephants are being killed. It's not a matter where we have protected areas, and it is a matter where we have most of the elephants and human and the fatty fish. So do we have any signs of recovery, any signs of sustainability? Yes, I'm presenting two cases. Number one, and we have had this very amazing landscape called Tank Cascade system of our country. Is it often predicted or proposed or coined as a time-tested solution for sustainable management of our landscape? So back in 1985, when Professor Madhu Bandara defined this landscape, he might have seen lots of undisturbed tank ecosystems. Since then, many people were interested in looking at its very rich evolution, starting from very early examples to the very sophisticated systems that has been evolved over many centuries, and to the cultural legacy that we really be proud of. And all these tank cascade systems have very unique cultural ecosystem. But unfortunately, now we don't have any such classic example, a tank cascade that we can use to name or list out these different components that has been there in our tanks, and most of these things are gone. So if you count that, I have given 20 different elements that should be there in a typical tank, and red ones are compromised. About 12 out of 20 are gone or disturbed or destroyed. So even we don't have a typical drone picture to take in one of these remaining tanks. So it's a very unfortunate situation, isn't it? And also I mentioned that the forests are being destroyed outside the protected area network again, and these are the ecosystems where we used to have the tank reservations. So they are being destroyed. And we have seen that a lot of soil degradation is happening in this landscape, and we did have various ways and methods in agricultural technology or in agronomy to preserve these ecosystems. From dam failures to let the remaining last of this dust cover or the tree covers are being lost. And we have reports that most of these tank reservations are now being loaded with lots of agro wells without any compromise or any prior estimate of how much groundwater that we can really extract from these catchments. We are extracting lots of water. And also earlier we had this Q ladder to bypass all this salinity, but through the irrigation channels in the absence of Kachakaluva, the tree bed just being behind after the bed one, now we are seeing the increase in salinity levels. Not just that, we are seeing an enormous amount of invasive avian invasive species are being spread across these landscapes. And we do have solutions. We can do culture-based fisheries. So the science and the technology in aquaculture has been described and well documented. But it's not happening. So where we have gone wrong. And also this is a resource that most of even these invasive plant species have some commercial economical value. So we can exploit this aquatic ornamental flora for our own good. And community-based agro-ecotourism has been proposed or pointed as a solution. And rather than looking all this as a problem, we can do lots of agro-ecotourism within this landscape. There are some cases actually that is happening. So tourists, they are coming to see these landscapes. So this is the biodiversity recorded from these tank cascade systems. So lots of biodiversity is already there outside the protected area network again. So some people, like this is Jeffrey Millionaire, they are doing quite well, and they have transformed this ecosystem into a model that they can harness the people, the communities, and this tank ecosystem biodiversity. Also, this is a nature-based solution, and I'm not going to detail one, but nowadays everybody is talking about nature-based solution. But our tank cascade ecosystem is a time-tested solution, and now we are talking in the global arena. But this is what I have to say at last in first case. We rely on ecosystem support components of this tank cascade system, from forest cover, wildlife, crop and vine reduce, and to the natural enemies and pollinators. If these things are compromised, this livelihood component that we rely on for agriculture, food production, animal and industries, all this, that will be compromised if we compromise the livelihood support, ecosystem support components of this tank cascade system. But the solutions are out there, and some of I briefly mentioned. So we can take this forward, but the thing is that how and where we are going to start. So this must be a holistic solution to a complex problem, because if the problem is complex, we don't have a silver bullet to resolve that problem. Yeah, I left my water there, but this is my second case. We have been surrounding remaining forest with a lot of monocultures. So from British colonial history and to the present day context, now down to oil palm plantation, replacing our rubber plantation, which is by definition is a forest. But these are landscapes that has been compromising, giving a lot of problems to our biodiversity and to the communities. And this is my very own landscape, the place that where I was born, and I have seen that the disappearing ecosystems in these landscapes. So this is our protected area network, highly fragmented. If you take a close look at all these areas like Avisavilla, Hangmala, Daraningala, Ratnapura, and what are these pink patches, the areas where we have been losing the tree cover over the last, I think, just 20-30 years period. And so a solution has been in action in our Andana biodiversity corridor, and we are trying to connect one of these little forest fragment into the Singaraja forest complex by making a forest corridor through tea monoculture and the human managed ecosystems. And on this landscape we have tea-based multi-crop systems, like they have very good soil conservation measures, lot of biodiversity and tree diversity, and that is the landscape that we really imagine to restore in these degrading areas. Also, earlier we have had very nice tea fields according to the recommended prescriptions of the Tea Research Institute, but they are now degrading, some of the areas are now degrading into marginal tea fields. So we are in the process of restoring this landscape into the former glory by establishing this corridor. Also, we have problems from demining to making mini hydro power plants and so on. So this is our imagination. So we want to transform this landscape into a thriving ecosystem that where tea and your crops and the communities can live together. So our sustainability will be assured. So this is how we basically started. at the beginning, we did soil conservation with soil assessments and to biodiversity assessments back in 2018, and also along the way, and we discovered some of the new species to the flora of our country. This second species that I am showing you here was reported in the very little forest fragment that we are trying to connect into the Singharaja forest, and it is actually this only one of the two locations where this species is ever recorded. And at the point of discovery and the time that at the time we are giving it a name, is being classified as a critically endangered species. So some of these species that we have already described, and so some are yet to be formally published. And in order to make this a reality, we have made this Andana threatened plant nursery, and we have been raising our 14,000 threatened plants from 1,800 threatened forest species. So our mission has been so successful, and this is probably, and to be honest, this is probably the largest threatened plant nursery in our country, perhaps even in the region, because the threatened plant species that we are raising in this location is not found anywhere else in the world. And there are some more success stories to share. With the limited time I will flash through. And this species, Luna arborifolia, was considered extinct in the wild. There was only one tree left on the entire world, which was in Peradeniya Royal Botanical Garden back in 2012, when the former peg list was described, this issue. But later on, some of our colleagues and through social media and so on, we recorded some of these species still there, habitat in a habitat outside the protected area network again, near to our Andana biodiversity corridor. So we have been observing the trees to give flowers, and we managed to raise about 200 plus seedlings, and they have now given back into the very locations where they were first recorded. So the conservation is taking its action. And the theory, the research, this conservation action is actually done in the form of a research. So our students, the communities, especially postgraduate and undergraduate students can come forward. They can do research in these permanent, long-term restoration plots that we have established. So we are sharing our enormous biodiversity, the seedlings that we have raised in this landscape with other sister restoration sites. So of course the other areas in the wet zone where their safety is assured, going over and beyond mere tree planting. And if all the, like I'm repeatedly telling, if we have looked at what happened to our trees that we planted, Sri Lanka has become an enormous forest garden in these years. But we are doing it different. We are planting these threatened species in Andana and also in exil for exil conservation in Sita Botanical Garden, where the location is dedicated for conservation of threatened biodiversity in this lowland rainforest region. So from kindergarten students to undergraduate schools, students and to the families, we are sharing this knowledge and the passion for conservation through our project. And we treat this community as our community and their livelihoods as our livelihoods. And so they rely on forest resources for their livelihood, and most of the forest products are extracted from without disturbing the ecosystem. They extract these resources. So in one of our attempts, we appreciated for conservation by providing financial incentives for not for being poor, not for being securing high grade 5 scholarship with high marks and so on, but for conserving these ecosystems, for preserving for maintaining the ecosystem rich, and for conserving their soils in this landscape. So financial rewards, we call them payment for ecosystem services were given. Also, we are trying to culture the apiculture in our landscape, because this is our future and the most important animal in the world, the bee, and they are the guardians of our landscape, the pollinators. So we are trying to raise this knowledge and the passion for conservation through apiculture in our landscape. So if you can recall the numbers that I showed you back at the beginning, back in 2018, we had only 70 species of birds in our landscape. This is what has happened in this year. So we are recording over 111 species of birds from this many families and 21 endemic species this is another success story that this has become 60% of Sri Lanka's endemic birds are now recorded in this period from 24 to 25, and this has become a stronghold for Sri Lanka's endemic birds and for bird watching. But we have no plans to open that is for ecotourism. And so not just alone, many other animal species are coming back to our landscape. For example, this one, green peat viper, is usually recorded from the forest understory, pristine, undisturbed forest understory, but now this is recorded in our landscape in the area that we are ecologically restoring. And so, yeah, that's it. Let's do it before it's too late. I don't think that Elon Musk will give you a ticket, so we can evacuate our planet Earth and land on the moon and somewhere. Thank you very much, and I take this opportunity to appreciate so many institutes that has been supporting our work.